How's it going? Today, I'm talking about my run training philosophy, why anyone can do any distance.
This is Running to the Castle, a podcast for injury-prone Run Disney runners on a journey to running magical miles. Join me, Dr. Allie, as I share the secrets I've gathered as a runner, doctor of physical therapy, and coach. You'll learn the exact ways I get my clients to the castle strong without feeling broken or held together with KT tape as they cross the finish line.
I do get this question or some semblance of this question fairly often, and I'm so glad I do because that means that you are potentially interested in working with me, and it is a valid question, and I'm going to try and summarize it because I want you to have the best possible experience that you can working with whoever you work with, whether it be me or someone else. I want you to know where I'm coming from if you decide to work with me, because if we don't line up, it's not going to be fun at all for either of us, right? I don't want to convince you of doing something a certain way if you want to do something another way. You will be able to find a coach who aligns with how you want to train. So there's no reason for you to try and fit a round peg in a square hole, square peg in a round hole. I totally just butchered that. You know what I mean? Like, there's no point in you trying to fit in a certain narrative if you don't agree with that narrative. If you want to run 5 days a week regularly, I would not be the best coach for you because that's not how I recommend training should happen if you want to train sustainably. So you'll be able to find a coach who will help you train 5 days a week. And I don't think you should go work with a running coach who says you should run 5 days a week if you want to run 3 days a week and do 2 cross training days and make sure you have 2 rest days. You should be able to find a coach that aligns with that. And I am 99% sure that there is a coach out there for everyone. I want the people who align with my philosophy to come join me. Now, maybe you don't like every single little thing I say. That's okay. I do not expect you to. But the general philosophy, I think you should agree with the general philosophy of the coach that you are training with, because otherwise you're fighting an uphill battle. And I'm not going to convince anybody to switch over to my way of thinking. Like, if here's an example. I have complimentary calls where you can come and ask me whatever questions you want about working together. Now, if I deem that it's a question like, what exactly should I do? It's going to be sign up with one of my paid coaching programs. I'm not going to give you free coaching advice, but I will give you the general outline. Like, if you have a knee injury and you want to know realistically how I would program out for you, how many days a week, where we would start, what kind of cross training I would recommend, what kind of strength training I would recommend, I'll give you the general overview, but I'm not going to give specifics of this exact one exercise and this exact number of reps and sets and weight and everything like that. But I'll give you, like, I would start you at this mileage. We would increase this amount of time. We would back it off here. We would incorporate this type of cross training because of X, Y, and Z. I would incorporate this kind of stretching because X, Y, and Z, and give you the general overview. Because I want to make sure that what I have to say and what I recommend makes sense for you. Because otherwise, if it doesn't make sense for you, you don't like that kind of coaching, you don't like the way the training plan is going to be laid out, you're not going to follow it and you're going to waste your money. And I don't want you to do that. And I'm not going to tell you, oh, you have to do X, Y, and Z. If you want to run 5 days a week and I'm saying you should cut it at 3 days most weeks, but you want to run 5 days, you're going to be annoyed every time you have a cross training day. And you are going to be upset if I say, well, I do recommend you run only 3 days. That is a misalignment, and you should find a coach that recommends running 5 days a week. So let's talk about my general training philosophy. So first of all, I think anybody can run any distance that they want. The time frame is going to be the biggest difference. If you came to me today and said, Dr. Allie, I would like to run a marathon February 1st. Well, today is January 26th, and I would say, okay, have you been training for a marathon for the past 7 months? No, the furthest distance I've run is 6 miles. I would say, not this February 1st, maybe February 1st, 2027. And let's just push out that goal. You can do it. The time frame is going to be dictating what the next year, 2 years, or what have you looks like. Can you do dopey? Absolutely. Can you do dopey if you have an 18-minute per mile pace right now? Absolutely. We need to train. I almost said change. We need to almost did it again. We need to train appropriately. So what is appropriate training? So if you're listening to this, you are probably slow, back of the pack, injury prone, or coming back from an injury, or as one of my clients like to say, injury averse, where you've never actually been injured. Maybe you're not actually injury prone, but you really don't want to be injured. So you want to do it the right way. I love that phrase. Thank you so much, Rachel. So I'm not working with elite runners. Do you want to do a sub 4-hour marathon? I don't know if I can get you there. I don't know. I haven't done it, mainly because my runners doing marathons are in the 6 to 8 hour marathon running time frame. Could I get you to 4 hours? Maybe. I'm not going to guarantee it. I guarantee somebody will cross the finish line without feeling broken, the best that they can feel. So I have a couple of layers of my training philosophy. In general, I recommend taking things slow and steady. If you want to build longevity, if you want to be able to run for decades, you need to go slow. Quick changes, meaning like overnight successes, are going to fall flat soon, meaning you're either going to get injured because you did too much too soon, you're going to get burnt out, and it's not going to be fun anymore, and you're going to stop training. So slow and steady wins the race. Be the tortoise, not the hare, in all aspects of it, on race day and in training. I believe there are 5 phases to a successful running journey. So if you want to be successful for years to come, I recommend mapping out your training program into these 5 phases. And it all depends on when your race is. Okay, so choose a race. And for conversation's sake, I'm going to choose a single race. We're not talking runDisney perfect season for this, but to get the concept of it, we're going to talk one single race. So I'm going to talk half marathon at marathon weekend. If you are new to the runDisney world, the half marathon at marathon weekend happens on Saturday, and it's at the beginning of January. I think it falls on the first weekend of the first full week in January. I think that's how they lay it out. Typically, it's like the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th day of January. So that Saturday, half marathon, it just happened 2 weeks ago for us at the time of recording this. So we're going to use that as our time frame. The 5 phases of a successful running journey, in my professional and personal opinion, are the build phase, the train phase, the taper phase, the race phase, and the rest and recovery phase. So depending on where you are in your year before or after that race will dictate what phase of the journey you are in. So for anybody who ran the half marathon at Marathon Weekend 2026 at the time of recording this would be in the build phase. They would have just entered it. Literally today. The build phase is the phase just after rest and recovery and before official training starts for the next race. So remember, we're talking one race. We're imagining I am doing one race a year, and it's the half marathon at Marathon Weekend. So the build phase for me would start today and last until official training starts for my next race. And so in this instance, it's the same weekend the following year. Official training for the half marathon at Marathon Weekend will start, according to my free training plans, September 7th, 2026. So I'm going to be in the build phase from January 26th until September 6th of 2026. It's a long time, and that's okay. The build phase is where you work on building strength, building speed. Those are the two main things that you're working on in the build phase. You may be building endurance if you've never ran a race before, if you've never ran before. Maybe you're starting at absolute zero. So you would be building endurance and building strength, and you could build speed. That happens in the build phase. Then we transition into the train phase. The train phase is when you are officially training, following that scheduled training plan for that specific race. So my free training plans have all of the dates listed out. The half marathon at Marathon Weekend training starts September 7th. So that is when the train phase starts. Now, for the half marathon, my training plans start at a 5K distance as the first long run. You would do 0 to 5K train distance in the build phase. But when that official training starts at 5K, September 7th, now we're in the train phase. And we are in the train phase for weeks up until you do the peak long run, the longest long run of that training plan, which for a half marathon on my free training plans is 10 miles. That 10-miler starts the taper phase. The taper phase is where you are tapering off from running long distances and gearing up for the race. For the half marathon, it's like 2 to 3 weeks, depending on your experience. The goal of the taper phase is to gain endurance. I don't want to say build endurance because, is to gain energy. I don't want to say build energy because that is confusing with the build phase, but you're gaining energy. So we're not depleting our energy reserves by running so much, and we're also starting to eat more compared to how much we're training. That's the taper phase. After the taper phase, we go into race phase. Race phase starts the week before the race. So if the half marathon is on Saturday, the Sunday before. So it's the beginning of that week. That's race phase. We are in race phase. We are barely running. We're keeping things moving and limber. We're starting to carb load. And we are getting in race mode. We are traveling down to Disney World. We are, just gathering all the things you do in race week. And then you also race. That happens in race phase. And then immediately, as soon as you cross the finish line of your race, you are in rest and recovery phase. And that is about 2 weeks, sometimes longer. But for a half marathon, it's typically 2 weeks. That is the 2 weeks immediately following your race. That is where you are giving your muscles a rest. You are letting your joints recover. You're letting your body recover. You're catching up on more sleep because those 2 a.m. wake ups in Florida, right? We are resting, recovering, letting our body heal from the stuff that happens naturally just from pushing ourselves to run all of these miles as fast as we're going to. So those are the 5 phases of a successful running journey. Depending on when your race is, you will fall in and out of those based on that time frame. If you're doing multiple races in a runDisney season, you may skip the build phase for, the in-between time. You may just be jumping from train to taper to race, train to taper to race, and then it's not until the season ends that you're back in the build phase. So as an example, right now, 2 weeks ago, we were at Marathon Weekend, and this upcoming week, we are at Disneyland. So my runners in Stronger, Faster, Finisher, they're looking at their training and they're like, oh my God, I'm barely running before Disneyland. And that's because they did 2 weeks of rest and recovery, and then they're in taper for a hot second. Actually, they go straight into race week, now that I'm thinking about it. rest and recovery for 2 weeks, right into race week. Barely doing any strength training, barely doing any running. I think the longest run I had anybody do was 45 minutes, and that's 10-minute warm-up, 25-minute easy run, 10-minute cool down. 25 minutes before probably a 10K and a half marathon challenge. Yep, that's the way it goes, because you need your body to be ready for that race, but you also need to recover from the other one. I don't recommend these back-to-back weekends if you can avoid it. Doing a half marathon at marathon weekend and then another half marathon the following weekend. I don't recommend it. If you asked me if you should do that, I would say no. Actually, somebody did ask me last week. One of my clients asked me, well, how do you feel about a half marathon the week before a marathon? And because wine and dine themes came out. And I said, honestly, I don't recommend it unless you don't really care about either of those races. If you're going to just take the marathon easy, maybe. And they said, meh, no, I want to do the marathon. I was like, okay, then no, that's taper. Don't do it. I don't recommend it. And so they said, well, great, I'll just save some money. So I help somebody save some money. Normally I'm encouraging of signing up for Disney races, but in this instance, no, not if you're going to do a marathon the week later. It's really hard on your body. So 5 phases of a running journey. Let's get into the 6 categories that go into a successful training plan. So I break these up into things that build your body and things that support your body. Think of it like an equation. We have the build on the left side and we have the support on the right side. So the build stuff is the training category and the strength category. Training category is things like your long run, your speed workouts, your cross-training activities, your paced walking activities. The strength includes lifting weights to literally build strength. And then on the right-hand side, we have our support categories. That's our rest and recovery, stretching and mobility, shoes and equipment, fueling and hydration. Those things support the body, but don't themselves get us across the finish line. They help it, but if we only did those things, we probably wouldn't get across the finish line. But on the other side, if we only do the things on the build side, we may get across the finish line, but we're not going to feel good doing it. We're probably going to be injured. We're going to be really sore and exhausted. So we need both sides to balance each other. So rest and recovery includes taking rest days. Recovery includes things like I do temperature and massage based. So temperature based, cold pack, hot pack, ice bath, hot Epsom salt bath, massage based, foam rolling, massage gun, professional massage. You can also include things like the pneumatic compression devices, also known as the squeezy boots. Those are the big boots that kind of massage your leg and get the fluid out, things like that. Then we have stretching and mobility. Those are stretches that you're doing, whether it be part of a warm-up, the static stretching afterward, mobility exercises to keep things loose and limber. Then we have shoes and equipment. So shoes is obvious. Running shoes, recovery shoes, UFOs, Crocs, things like that. Orthotics can fall into that category. Equipment can be things like, should you use a firm foam roller? Should you use a soft foam roller? Should you use this brand massage gun? Should you get a different kind? This brand squeezy boots? Should you get a different kind? And then it can be the professionals that you use. Professional massage. Are they doing a good job? Do they help your body recover? Your coach, are they helping to support and guide you in where you want to go? Then we have fueling and hydration. That's what you're eating, when you're eating, how much you're eating, how much you're hydrating with, what you're hydrating with. Carb loading, carbs on long runs, what you eat for breakfast or lunch or dinner before a long run or after a long run or before a speed workout, after a speed workout, right? So we have the build categories. That's the running, the cross training, the long runs, the speed workouts, the strength lifting exercises, strength exercises. Those are the things that build up your body. They build up your strength. They build up your endurance. They build up your body's ability to do the thing. And then we have the support categories that support your body so you don't feel like absolute crap doing it. They need to balance each other out. And each person is going to be a little bit different in exactly what they need, right? So for training, maybe somebody would be better off doing 3 days of running, 1 day of swimming, and 1 day of riding their bike. But maybe somebody else would do 3 days of running, but they want to do paced walking and they want to use the elliptical. And strength exercises, maybe somebody goes to a gym and lifts heavy weights with barbells and dumbbells and machines. And maybe somebody else works out at home because that's what their schedule allows for. They use elastic bands and lighter dumbbells, and they do Pilates or something like that, right? That person does those things. And then maybe somebody is really good and solid on their stretching routine because they've been a dancer and they've done yoga for years and they don't need help doing that. And they're really solid in that. But maybe they need more help fueling and hydrating because they've never been taught how to fuel for a long run. And they grew up a dancer, and in their background, their dance teachers always told them don't eat anything, right? And so that person's support side, planning it out, looks different. Maybe their focus, we know that they're going to do solid on the stretching, but maybe they forget to take a hot Epsom salt bath and they forget to eat. So working more towards balancing out the recovery with the hot Epsom salt bath and making sure they're having a protein shake while they take that hot Epsom salt bath, right? It's all about balancing out these different categories based on what your body needs, not what Susie Q or Johnny down the street, what they need, what you need, and making sure that everything is balanced together, making sure that you're not doing incredibly long runs, long, hard runs after a really intense leg day at the gym, balancing out when those should go together or how they should work together in the week. Should they be back-to-back days like that? Should they be on the same day, or should they be like a whole week apart? And then what kind of support activities that person actually needs. So whenever I'm programming out for somebody, I'm asking, what does your running look like? What does your cross training look like? What does your strength look like? And then what do all of these support categories look like? What do you do for rest and recovery? Do you feel recovered and ready to run after your runs? Or are you down for the count for 3 or 5 days? Do you get nauseous, have diarrhea, vomit, lightheaded? Do you get any of those symptoms during or after a run? Okay, well, what are you fueling with and what are you hydrating with? And we start looking at all these different categories to see where that person needs more attention. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, my training hasn't gone great, write out those different categories and answer for yourself, where am I solid on this? And where could use some more work? Because once you start balancing those out, you can go any distance you want.